The screen didn't flicker when the missile hit the market. The feed was perfect. That was the problem. I sat in the operations room watching the heat bloom fade from my monitor. 4 seconds earlier, the crosshairs had centered on a crowd of figures the targeting system flagged as weapons. But I'd seen the raw feed. I'd counted the shopping bags in their hands, not rifles. The system had been perfect. The intelligence had been wrong. And now 12 bodies cooled on a street that was never supposed to be a target zone. My commanding officer stood behind me, close enough that I could smell the coffee on his breath. He slid a folder across my desk. Inside was a single page, mission report, strike approval, and at the bottom, a blank signature line with my name typed beneath it. The document called every person in that market a confirmed insurgent. I looked at the time code on my screen. Then I looked at the time code on the report. They didn't match. He leaned down. His voice was calm. He told me the paperwork needed to move up the chain by end of day. He told me it was already approved at every level above us. He told me my signature was just a step, nothing to worry about. I didn't pick up the pen. Let me rewind. Let me show you how a single refusal can turn your entire life into a target. 3 weeks earlier, I was just another analyst in a forward operations unit. My job was simple: watch the feeds, check the targets, make sure the people we were hitting were the people we were supposed to hit. I wasn't a hero. I wasn't looking for trouble. I stayed quiet, checked the data twice, and kept my head down. My sister lived stateside. My husband was deployed 2 zones over. We'd been married 6 years. We had a plan. 2 more tours, then we'd both get out. Buy a house, something normal. The operation that morning started like any other. I logged in at 0500. The target list came through at 0530. High-value suspected insurgent meeting in a commercial district. 3 vehicles, multiple armed personnel. Greenlit by intelligence. My job was to track movement and confirm identity before the strike. I pulled up the drone feed. Infrared first, then visible spectrum. The vehicles were there. The personnel were there. But something felt off. The figures weren't moving like a tactical team. They weren't scanning rooftops or checking corners. They were walking. Slowly. One of them stopped to adjust a bag on his shoulder. Another waved to someone across the street. I zoomed in. The bags weren't tactical. They were cloth, market bags. I switched back to the intelligence overlay. The system had flagged them as armed, but I couldn't see weapons, not one. I called it up the chain. I asked for a second check. My CO came down personally. He looked at my screen for maybe 10 seconds. Then he told me the intelligence was solid. He told me the strike was approved. He told me to stop second-guessing the system. I asked him to wait, just 5 minutes. Let me cross-reference the heat signatures with the visible light feed. Let me pull the archived footage from the same location yesterday. Let me make sure. He didn't wait. The missile hit at 0642. The feed stayed live. I watched the impact. I watched the scatter. I watched the aftermath. And then I watched my CO walk back into the room with a folder in his hand. The mission report was already written. The labels were already assigned. Confirmed insurgents. Successful strike. No collateral damage. He put the folder on my desk and walked out. I sat there for an hour. I didn't sign. I didn't move. I just watched the feed loop in my head. The bags, the wave, the slow walk. By that evening, my CO came back. This time he wasn't calm. He asked me why the report wasn't signed. I told him the footage didn't match the label. He told me the footage was being reviewed by intelligence. He told me my job wasn't to interpret. My job was to confirm. And the confirmation had already been made. I asked him who made it. He didn't answer. He just tapped the signature line and left. I didn't sign. The next morning, my sister called. Her voice was tight, panicked. She'd been trying to refill a prescription through our family's military health coverage. The system kept kicking it back. Delayed. Pending review. She'd called 3 times. Each time they told her there was a flag on the account. No explanation, no timeline, just a flag. I checked the account myself. The coverage had been active for 4 years. No issues, no missed payments, no red flags. Until yesterday. I felt the floor tilt under me. By noon, my husband called. His voice was flat. He'd just been handed new orders. Immediate deployment, high-risk zone. No explanation, no lead time, just pack and move. He asked me if I knew anything. I told him I didn't. But I did. I knew exactly what was happening. The message was clear. Sign the lie or watch everything you care about get torn apart piece by piece. I sat at my desk that afternoon and stared at the folder. It would be so easy. One signature, one line, and my sister's coverage would clear. My husband's orders would get reassigned. My life would go back to normal. No one would ever know. The report would move up the chain. The strike would stay justified, and 12 people would stay labeled as insurgents forever. But I would know. I opened my computer. I pulled up the system audit logs. Every operation we ran was recorded. Every feed, every timestamp, every label. The logs were automatic. They couldn't be changed without leaving a trail. I found the strike footage. I found the intelligence overlay. I found the timestamp gap. Then I found something else. The original target list had been updated, manually, 30 minutes before the strike. The update had relabeled the location from low-priority surveillance to high-value target. The update had been entered by my CO. I saved the logs. I backed them up. I copied them to an external drive, and then I did something I'd never done before. I requested a meeting with the Inspector General's office. I didn't go through my chain of command. I didn't ask permission. I just filed the request. My CO found out within an hour. He called me into his office. He closed the door. He asked me what I thought I was doing. I told him I was keeping evidence of a potential abuse of authority. He told me I was making a mistake. He told me I was throwing away my career. He told me my family was going to suffer because I couldn't follow simple orders. I asked him why he updated the target list. He didn't answer. He just stared at me. And for the first time, I saw something flicker behind his eyes. Not anger, fear. He told me to get out. Over the next 72 hours, everything got worse. My sister's coverage was suddenly put back. No explanation. My husband's orders were delayed, pending review. My CO stopped speaking to me. But I knew he wasn't done. He was just regrouping. I checked the system logs again. The strike footage had been moved. Not deleted, moved. Filed under a restricted access folder. Someone was trying to bury it. I pulled the audit trail. The move had been approved by my CO, but the logs didn't lie. Every action left a mark. I copied everything. The original footage, the updated target list, the audit trail, the label gaps. I packed it all into a single file and sent it to the Inspector General with a formal complaint. I cited the protections I was entitled to, I cited the timeline, I cited the payback. Then I waited. The investigation opened within a week. My CO was called in for questioning, so was I. I brought the external drive. I walked them through every timestamp, every gap, every manual override. I showed them the footage. I showed them the bags. I showed them the wave. They asked me why I didn't sign the report. I told them the truth, because it wasn't true. The CO tried to defend it. He said the intelligence was solid. He said the decision was made above his level. He said I was overreacting. But when they asked him why he manually updated the target list, he paused, just for a second. And that second was enough. The investigator pulled up the audit log. The CO's face went pale. He tried to explain. He said it was a routine fix. He said the original list had a clerical error. But the log showed the update happened after the drone was already in position, after I'd called for a second check, after I'd asked him to wait. He'd overridden me. And then he'd tried to bury the evidence. The hearing took 3 days. By the end, my CO was removed from command. My sister's coverage stayed active. My husband's orders were reassigned to a standard rotation, and the strike report was relabeled, not as a successful operation, as an incident under review. I sat in my quarters that night and looked at the external drive on my desk. It was just data, just timestamps and logs. But it was enough. Because the system, for all its flaws, still left a trail. And if you knew where to look, you could follow it. I didn't feel like I'd won. I didn't feel proud. I just felt tired. 12 people were still gone. The footage was still real. The mistake was still made. But at least now it wouldn't be called a success. My CO thought I was just an operator, someone who watched screens and followed orders. He forgot I was an analyst, someone who checked the data, someone who kept receipts. Dignity isn't about standing up and making a speech. It's about knowing when the data doesn't match the story. It's about keeping the logs. It's about refusing to sign the lie even when the cost is everything you've built. Because once you sign, the lie becomes yours, and you can't unsign it. You can't take it back. You just carry it. Forever. I learned something in that operations room. The truth doesn't need you to be brave. It just needs you to be accurate. To check the timestamps, to save the logs, to refuse the pen when the paper is a lie. The screen didn't flicker when the missile hit the market. The feed was perfect. And that's how I knew something was wrong. Because in war, nothing is ever that clean. If you've ever been asked to sign something that didn't sit right, you know the weight of that pen. Drop a comment, share your story, and if this one hit home, pass it along. Sometimes the smallest refusal is the loudest act of courage.